Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Here on the Alex Garrett Sports Network, we're monitoring the Masters, and I would say if Tiger advances to the second, the past cut day, go to T-Squared Social. That's right. They didn't pay me to say this, but go to the restaurant of Tiger Woods and Justin Timberlake on 42nd Street to watch Tiger at the Masters. And it's Fanatics Friday, so what a great day to talk about Fanatics Fest coming to New York City August 16th to 19th. It's a weekend, and a weekend you don't want to miss. Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, even Sabrina Ionescu of the New York Liberty scheduled to attend. Buy your tickets at the link below. Now, I don't know if affiliates are going to get to sell tickets, but I'm jumping ahead and saying join Fanatics at Fanatics Fest in NYC this August. Dates and times and guests in the link below at fanaticsfest.com. Today, we're going to talk to Dave Popkin about Seton Hall's magical NIT championship run with Lou Terminello. Lou, we've been hitting home runs here lately to begin the baseball season on our podcast, haven't we?
Yes, we have. We've had a lot of good guests on lately, and we have a great one today. The voice of Seton Hall basketball, who was at the play-by-play mic for that thrilling victory in the final and in the semifinal, but the thrilling victory in the final at Butler against Indiana State. Wonderful call by a wonderful broadcaster, and that was great redemption for Seton Hall and for Indiana State, both who should have been in the NCAAs. But Dave, what were your thoughts about that whole NIT run?
It's good to be with you guys as always, and I think it was a lot better than losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I thought the school and the team and the coach and the fans all enjoyed it, got a lot out of it. The games at Walsh were exciting. The games at Hinkle were just as exciting, if not more so. You referenced the final, which was one of the most exciting games I ever called, and I've been doing this for about 30-something years. 2-point game, obviously two good teams, could have gone either way, and I think Seton Hall made the right decision by playing in the tournament, and after they got through that first game against St. Joe's in overtime, they started to steamroll people, and they played really well out in Indianapolis, and that was a very fun week for everybody.
Yeah, I was talking to some people who are Seton Hall alums, including my brother, and a lot of them said, "I'm happier than I thought I would be." Them winning the championship, so that was a source of pride, obviously, and I think it was important for Coach Holloway. I really do, moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to win 5 straight games against good teams. And the NIT field was strong this year because of various reasons. There were bid stealers in the NCAA tournament, leaving teams like Seton Hall and Providence and Oklahoma and Indiana State, St. John's out. And thereby, the ones that said yes and wanted to go into the NIT, even a Princeton and a UNLV, these are good teams. So, I think that college basketball is deep. There's a lot of talent. And to be able to win a tournament like that, even though it wasn't the big one, it gave them some momentum, I hope. And there was a nice celebration with maybe 1,000 people on the quad on campus afterwards. And as we were riding in with the police escort down South Orange Avenue and people were standing and cheering and waiting, I just thought, good for these kids. They stuck with it. They gave it all. I mean, they really showed a lot of heart. And this is what hard work equals. The team that didn't play in the NIT or lost in the second round of the NIT didn't get a semi-parade onto campus and all of their friends and family cheering for them. So it was good.
I thought they played hard right through the end. I really did. I really thought they played their guts out.
Yep.
Dave, I want to ask you about the evolution of the tournament because you started at Walsh Gym and ended up at Hinkle Fieldhouse. I mean, tell us about what it was like each atmosphere per round.
Yeah, I mean, I think panic was the first game because they needed OT and St. Joe's was really good. Their center, who can do a lot. Isandako has just transferred to Providence. So that's the level of player that he is. And they had problems with him and some of the guards on that team. And I think just, recovering from not making the tournament in the first place and, just getting into that right gear of Seton Hall basketball. And once they did that and Al Dawes kind of saved their bacon and Dylan Adewusu was playing hard and had some big games there early in the tournament. Once they got it going a little bit, I think they started to realize, hey, we're one of the best teams left, and let's just keep winning and do what we do. And those next couple of games were pure domination. And if you're in a small gym like that with 1,300 people and you get it going with threes and dunks and steals and momentum plays, kind of takes the other team's heart away.
No, absolutely. And they got some contributions from an unknown, an unknown source, really, in young Sanders, with what he scored 11 points in the semifinal game, and he had played well in that quarterfinal game. Now, Sanders or Isaiah Coleman, who I think has a lot of talent, when I watch him play, and I know he only played like 15, 16 minutes a game. No threat of the transfer portal with these two guys, do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, the portal is a mystery right now.
Yeah.
You have more guys being added every day. I'm sure almost every player on every team is being contacted.
Yeah, no,
it's the Wild
great.
West. It's crazy. Like I hope that a good core of players from this team stays, and these are guys that would obviously step up into starter or sixth man kind of roles for Seton Hall next year. Coleman especially. Sanders can shoot the ball, and if he can, continue to improve the other parts of his game, he could be an even bigger part of the rotation. As it was, they were not a deep team, and he was basically like the seventh man on this year's team. But yeah, I mean, those two would be good to keep.
Yeah,
Dave, I got to ask you this. I want to ask you about Dre Davis because we heard your call on Crashing the Boards, and you got the chance to talk with him. Tell about his progression through the year and leading up to that shot that really put him over the top for the NIT championship.
I think Seton Hall fans fell in love with him because he did everything well. He could score at all three levels. He was a nice kid. He worked really hard. He played hurt. He played big minutes whenever they needed him to. He was usually, 35 plus minutes in any game that mattered. This year, he could guard multiple positions. They made him guard fours and fives sometimes, even though he's really a three, I think. And he became a better three-point shooter, great post moves. The game-winning basket was fantastic. It was a pro move, spin in the lane and able to finish and, dire circumstances there. So, I mean, he is in the transfer portal. It's been reported.
yes.
So we don't know, if he stays or goes. Guys can go in the portal and come back. They could go in the portal and go pro. Like you don't know. The portal closes May 1st. I think a lot of decisions will be made on a lot of players, over the next few weeks here. And then maybe, June, you have an idea on a roster. But in terms of what Dre Davis gave to Seton Hall the last 2 years, they couldn't have asked any more.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, he was fantastic, and he was a pro. I mean, he played up to a professional level, and I don't mean professional going into the NBA, but he handled his job with professionalism, and he did a great job, and he deserved that. He deserved that winning basket. Before we get to UConn, how's Rutgers? I know they have the two great recruits, the number 2 and number 3 recruits coming in. Anything else that you see? What else do we need to know about Rutgers moving forward?
It's a great recruiting class overall. I think it's 4 or 5 freshmen. They also have Lathan Somerville, a big guy, in addition to Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, who were top 3 or top 5 recruits. Harper was the co-MVP of the McDonald's All-Star game. I was surprised to see so many of their players in the portal, considering the fact that they're probably going to be really good next year. But everybody seems like they're out for themselves right now. So um, they have added some transfers already. They have Zach Martini from Princeton, which is a perfect add for them because he can play inside or outside, good shooter, a little bit of an undersized big man that can pass, smart, obviously, and would be a good senior, like fifth year leader for all these young guys coming in. I thought that was a brilliant pickup by Steve Peichel. They also have a scorer. I think he's from Eastern Michigan, Tyson Acuff, like a 20 point a game guy. Not sure how he fits if those freshmen are going to want to score a lot, but it brings them another, quality rotation player that has proven it in Division One basketball. Um, Cliff Amory's in the portal. It seems like he's going to be moving on, so they could maybe use some help inside, but um, they have length. I don't know if they have beef, but I think they're going to be good. I've seen a couple of those way too early top 25 polls, and Rutgers has been
Right.
in a couple of them.
Yeah. I hate to talk about the portal. Alex and I talk about the portal all the time. I mean, Dave, how are they going to get their hands on this? That it's not like you just said, the wild, wild west. I was watching the semifinal game, and Fran Fraschilla was pretty adamant and critical of the state of college basketball with the portal, with NIL. I mean, what's going to happen? What are we going to look like in 3 years or 5 years?
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. I think the one common sense thing they can do is move the start of the portal back until maybe Final Four weekend or just after that, until basically everybody is done playing, because it was like mayhem. Because you have, 200 and some odd teams that are done, but you have over 100 teams that are still playing in the four tournaments. Like the CIT came back this year to a small extent. Plus, you have the
Right.
CBI, you have the NIT, you have the NCAAs, and it's well over 100 teams. So that's a lot of players, and some of those teams opted out of some of those tournaments that they could have been in because they knew that their players are going to be leaving. Like it's mayhem. I don't think it's good for anybody. So hopefully they can at least start the clock later, um, and play through these postseason tournaments. Um, but beyond that, I don't know. In terms of the NIL and the money, I don't know how long that's sustainable. Um, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's really it's nuts, and then it's almost as nuts as these coaching changes. Uh, you know, Danny Sprinkle is getting rave reviews. Utah State, look what he did in his first year at Utah State. They're 28-7. And they get knocked out on a Saturday night by 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock on Sunday. He's the head coach of Washington. Um, the same thing. The coach of Indiana State, Josh Schertz, becomes the head coach at St. Louis University. Dusty May loses on a Friday, and like 18 hours later, he's the coach of Michigan. First of all, how do they get that done so quickly? How is everything hammered out so quickly? You lose at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock the next day, you're being announced as coach of another team. I don't know how they can get all the X's and O's, dot the I's and cross the T's of a contract and make an announcement like that.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is that they were working on it in advance. You know,
That's the thing I would have to say. And isn't that against the rules?
uh, I think that if you're still under contract to somebody, at least ethically, yes. I mean, if you haven't signed the deal with the next school yet, and your agent is talking to their agent about, possible future employment and buyouts and stuff like that, I don't know how you can get around that. And I think that it's going to continue to happen. I think that any time that you get one of these big programs failing, like a Michigan or a Louisville, and they're going to be on the make right away. They're going to be thinking and planning during the season, and you got to have a plan B. So they're going to go after whatever the hot young coach is, or whatever the hot coach is that they feel like overachieved at, a certain level, like a Josh Schertz. I mean, that was the worst kept secret in basketball. It seemed like within hours, of them losing to Seton Hall in the NIT, he was headed to St. Louis, and there's rumors that he's, taken some of his players with him. So it's crazy, but the business side of it, but the actual basketball side of it, the big dance this year, the NIT, as we talked about, the basketball is still good. It's really watchable, men's and women's. I enjoyed all of the tournaments this year. I thought it was a really high level of play. There's more good shooters than I remembered in recent years, which makes the games more palatable. If you get the games in the 70s and 80s and 90s instead of some of these games like Virginia plays in the 40s.
Yeah.
I think the game itself on the court is in good shape, but it's going to be hard for these schools that, only have a player for 1 or 2 years, and the fans get attached, and then that player leaves. It's not great
Dave,
holistically for the sport.
Dave, that was intact because we had the great coaches that still sit on the sidelines. But I've been noticing in college football that disturbing trend of players sitting out and coaches even leaving before their bowl game. You don't ever think that these coaches would ever skip town before an NCAA tournament game, right? I mean, that will never be the future of the college basketball world, will it?
I don't think before an NCAA tournament game, but Lou will remember Michigan back in '89 when Seton Hall went to the Final Four. Michigan fired Bill Frieder before the tournament, and Steve Fisher was the interim, and he took them all the way to the championship. You saw one of the guys in the tournament, right? The guy at Long Beach State, right?
Yes.
Dan
That's
Munson.
right. Yes.
He
Yeah.
got fired before the tournament, and he led them to the NCAA. So you see weird stuff. So could a coach leave? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Lou has lived through Larry Brown, so
That's right. I did. And well, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, let's
But
talk about the big headline of the week, which was obviously Calipari. He's a local guy in the sense of worked on the Nets, and I'm sure you got to know him, Dave and Lou. What's your thoughts about that? I mean, when the season ended for Kentucky, I thought maybe he won't be there much longer, and sure enough, he's with Arkansas. I mean, does that surprise you, Dave?
yeah, a little bit, but it's a unique job. It's a unique place. You're really in the fishbowl there. It's their pro team. It's all they care about. And they expect to win the national championship every year, and he hasn't done it in like 12 years. So he was under fire. He's had some early losses, despite the fact that he's had great recruiting classes. And I think that it seemed like a mutual parting of the ways. I don't know. I'm not on the inside of Kentucky basketball, but it didn't seem like they were giving him a strong vote of confidence. They did give him a vote of confidence from the AD, but he landed on his feet. He's making almost as much money. He's making like $7 million a year, and he's going to get kids. I thought his comment was very telling. Yesterday at the press conference, he said the first thing he did was, I met with the team, and there is no team.
right.
Because half the guys are graduating or transferring, or maybe it's guys that he doesn't want to keep. I mean, it's mayhem. So as the Mad Dog would say, they're not going to hold the benefit for him.
All right, that's for sure. Well, obviously, I know Coach Cal a little bit from the Nets days, and of course, I think being at Kentucky for 15 years, which is the second longest reign of any coach at Kentucky after Adolph Rupp, which was totally different times, obviously. Kentucky has unrealistic expectations. It's a pressure cooker of a job every single day. It's probably still the toughest job in college basketball, but it's still probably the number one job in college basketball. But a couple of guys have already turned it down. Billy Donovan has turned it down, I guess, and Scott Drew have turned it down. But who knows? Billy Donovan, you'd think would have been a natural, but he's with the Bulls. But from what I heard, Billy Donovan hated recruiting before NIL. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he would like somebody will get the job and somebody will do a good job. And of course, Calipari will now be re-energized because he's such a good coach, and he'll do a good job at Arkansas. But that Kentucky job can wear you down. There's no doubt about it. But let's talk about something that was just, to me, absolutely tremendous. The greatness of this UConn championship team. I think, and I might be in the minority here, I think it's the best UConn team ever. And I think Hurley is by far and away the best coach in college basketball. Yeah, he's a little, his on-court demeanor is a little shaky, but it's better than it was a couple of years ago. But he could flat out coach, and I think this was a great team. Yeah, I know they had some 23, 24-year-old guys and had played 5 or 6 years, but they could beat any way. They can beat you half court. They can beat you physical. They're a tremendous team, and it's a shame that, in a way, that this team's not coming back next year, but they'll still be good with their 5 new guys. I'm sure Klingon's going to go into the draft, and other guys will. But what's your take on UConn, a team that Seton Hall beat by 15 points in the Big East opener?
Yeah, I think that was their last loss or second to last loss of the year back on January 18th. Well, I think that it proves that Seton Hall belongs, but in terms of UConn, I think it's the best team that I can remember in a long time. Maybe going back to those early 90s Duke and UNLV teams. Maybe it's just, being nostalgic on my part that that's when I really started getting into college basketball. And I remember those teams being really tough, with Danny Ferry and Leitner and Grant Hill on Duke, and of course the Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon teams. This UConn team had everything. They had 2 good centers. Klingon is a lottery pick. Castle is a lottery pick. Newton will play in the NBA. He'll probably be like a late first, second round pick, something like that. Caravan is underrated. He wasn't super consistent this year, but he'll play in the NBA probably.
Yep, I agree.
He's a big guy that can shoot. Spencer was the heart of the team. They bring him in from Rutgers, and he was the key. I felt like a lot of times, with making a big 3, loose ball rebound, clutch free throws, just his attitude out there. He was talking about somebody being rejuvenated. He was a perfect fit for them, and I thought he was the MVP of the team. I mean, Klingon, without him, they might still win it. But he was a dominating center that continued to get better. I think the big difference for them this year is that even though they lost a few NBA players off last year's team, they became a smoother and more dynamic offensive team. Danny admitted that he didn't work on defense a lot this summer. He just put a lot of new stuff in on offense, and he made them really hard to guard. And they ran beautiful stuff on offense. And most teams just, especially on short notice in a tournament setting, can't do it. They just run too much good stuff, and the guys are so well drilled. So obviously, excellent coach. It's great for the Big East. That they get 4 championships in the last 8 years and back to back for UConn. So it was when Seton Hall wasn't playing them, it was a pleasure to watch them.
So I was going to say, what was it like watching Hurley on the sideline as you're announcing with Gary, or you're announcing in Connecticut or at Seton Hall, watching him coach? What was that like for you, seeing him on the road to repeating?
Yeah, he's. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's great. Obviously, a Seton Hall guy, so we want him to do well. Is he a little crazy on the sidelines? Yes. Our college basketball coach is crazy on the sidelines. Sometimes, yes. Most of the time, yes. So I think he fits right in.
He's a remarkable coach, and really, I actually already think he's a Hall of Famer. And I agree with you on Cam Spencer, and I think he has a shot to play in the NBA. I think maybe he'll be a G League guy first, but I agree with you. He really was the heart and soul, and he does those things. You hate to use this old term. He does those things that don't show up in the box score.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks have a team full of those guys, and they're one of the best teams in the East.
Mm-hmm.
Top 6 team. Dave and Lou, I got to say, I feel like these 2 teams, Connecticut and Seton Hall, really took their roads personally, meaning that UConn took being ranked third in the Big East personally, and that led them to the championship. See, no, not being in the tournament, they took that personally, and they went on to win the NIT. So, what's that say about these two teams' drives? Do you see any parallels in that regard that maybe they did have a bit of a chip on the shoulder and they're going to work to prove, yeah, we belong type of thing?
Yeah, could be. Whatever you can use for motivation is useful, and um, yeah, I think Seton Hall definitely. They felt slighted, and the five seniors got together. They unanimously decided they wanted to play, and once they really started to play, um, they were tough out. I mean, I went back and looked at the schedule, and they didn't have any bad losses. Like you could say that Rutgers, because of where they ended up, that was a bad loss for them, but it was a 7 point loss. It was early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
After that, a couple of the margins were big, like at UConn, but who's not losing big at UConn? At Marquette, who's not losing big at Marquette or at Creighton? But in terms of like taking care of business with their home games, stealing some road games like Providence, um, I, beating UConn at home, beating Marquette at home. I thought they did all they could, with this team. And they won 25 games. You couldn't really ask much more out of this group, and I think their motivations were varied, but that was certainly one of them.
And you got to remember, they played a couple of games that they probably would have won if Kadari Richmond wasn't injured. They would have won the Providence game at home.
Totally.
And he didn't play.
Yep.
And then there was another game that I think was also at home, and I can't remember it right now, where Richmond, when he missed those back-to-back games.
Yeah, it was at Marquette. And the game
okay.
they played well in the first half of that game, but it kind of got away from them because they didn't have him and they didn't have the depth. But when they had him the first time, they beat Marquette. So, yeah, I mean, your point is well taken.
Dave, anybody that's already committed to Seton Hall that you think can make an impact next year?
Yes. They have two high school players committed. They don't have any transfers committed yet as of this recording. Jasim Felton is a big-ish guard, like a combo guard that would probably take some of Al Dawes' minutes, and they can likely count on him to score. He seems pretty dynamic, four-star player, plays at one of the big prep schools, I think Combine Prep or Combine Academy. So they like him. And then they have a kid named God's Will, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name yet because it's very long, but I think it's Erharian, from Long Island Lutheran, who's a big guy and who they think can play defense right away and hopefully offense soon. He seems like an exciting player that would probably step into the big man rotation right away on this team, and they lose Jaden Bediako, so they need somebody to play some minutes. If you assume, which you can't even assume anything anymore, but if you assume that Elijah Hutchins Everett stays, this kid probably plays in a rotation with him up front, and then perhaps they go shopping for some other guys in high school and transfers. But they've technically only lost two players so far in Dawes and Bediako because they're fifth years and their eligibility is done. And then they have the two freshmen coming in. And other than that, we don't know anything about the roster.
Right. Well, one last thing on Bediako. I haven't seen a player improve from opening day in the pre-conference schedule to where he ended up at the end of the season. I mean, the guy worked hard and his improvement was stunning. It really was.
Lou, I think that is really the hallmark of Seton Hall basketball over the last 10 to 15 years, Willard and Holloway era, is that they'll bring in a 3-star and make him a 4 or 5-star player, like a Miles Powell. They'll improve guys. Like when Romaro Gill came into Seton Hall, he was not a big player, but by the time he left, he was a legit shot blocker that could go play pro somewhere. And, Desi Rodriguez, he was not a highly recruited player. He was kind of a, third or fourth guy in your class kind of player. And he continues to make a lot of money overseas because he got a lot better each year and became a dynamic scorer and a tough kid. And you saw that with this year's team for sure. We talked about Dre Davis. Bediako was right in that class. First couple games of the year, you weren't sure if he was going to be able to do it, but then he became a double-double machine. I think in his entire 4-year career at Santa Clara, he had 18 double-figure games, and at Seton Hall, he had 17 double-figure games in 37 games. So, and against higher level competition. And
Right.
this is a
Yeah.
guy that generally uh, had great hands, stayed out of foul trouble most games, was a good teammate, didn't demand the ball, but when he got it, he shot it at a very high percentage. His field goal percentage, I have to look, but was well over 60% this year. So he was perfect.
No, he was absolutely, and kudos to him. He really did a nice job, and kudos to the coaches.
Yeah.
Well,
So that
speaking of Bediako, the last 8 seconds of that game, the NIT, I mean, you were at all levels in your voice there as the misses kept happening. Were you nervous when those were going to go in, or were you confident? Okay, Seton's got this.
No, very nervous because they're such a good offensive team and a good three-point shooting team. And we could talk about those last 8.4 seconds for a whole separate show because I had to explain it to somebody that didn't see it. And it took me 3 or 4 minutes just to go through what happened on that sequence of plays. And they said, wait, how much time was on the clock? I said 8.4 seconds. So that's how condensed and crazy it was with the ball bouncing around. For the people that didn't see it, or just to get my perspective on it, I'll just give you a brief snippet of what I thought. Indiana State is down 2. They don't need 3, but they're going for 3 on their first 3 attempts, and the only 3 that would have counted. It turns out, with the clock. So they were going for the win. The first play, when Swope got the ball for them and kind of bounced into Dawes went flying. The officials did not make a call. I felt like that was cosmic justice for 1989, for when the ghost call in the final moments, with Ramil Robinson going to the line and John Clougherty blowing the whistle against Seton Hall when there was no foul. I felt like maybe they got some karma there in that moment, but I still don't know if that was a foul either way. I'm glad they didn't blow the whistle and they let the players decide it. But the one thing that I haven't heard from anybody else is that after the shooter collides with Dawes, the defender, the ball pops straight up into the air. It wasn't really a shot, and he catches it. So that's a travel. And they didn't call it. So all right, so that's 2 play-ons within the first 3 seconds. Then he tries a second shot. Bediako comes in and blocks it cleanly. Does he get a little bit of the body? Maybe, but that wasn't a foul. And then the ball pops out deep on the wing, 30 feet away, to
yeah.
one of their best players, Conwell, and he had a pretty good look, and it hit the front of the rim, and it would have counted to win the game. And then the subsequent tip didn't go, and it looked like it wouldn't have counted anyway. But I mean, multiple opportunities, and Seton Hall dodged a bullet there, but they played good defense, and I think they deserved to win the game, and the basketball gods look kindly on them.
Dave, you talk about the phantom call in '89. It happened right in front of me. I was 12 rows up on the first level, and I could still see that terrible call. But when Indiana State called a timeout with 8.4 seconds ago, the score was 79-77. And the first thing that popped into my head was Indiana State's going to hit a 3 and Seton Hall's going to lose 80-79, which was the same score as the NCAA tournament final game against Michigan.
That would have been cruel. I didn't think of that, but yeah. That would have been cruel.
So, but it all worked out for the best, and it was exciting, and I'm glad. I was so happy for you that you were able to call the game. I mean, that rain out, I definitely played it to your favor.
Yeah. I mean, Gary planned to come out Thursday for the final, but it rained all week, and they ended up playing 2 games that day. And
Dave, it was also like a home game for Indiana State because of Hinkle Fieldhouse, Indianapolis. I mean, Seton Hall was against that as well, weren't they?
Yeah, that was one of the loudest gyms I've ever been in. I can remember several over the course of my career, Seton Hall against Kansas in Wichita in the second round of the NCAA tournament. It was
Oh,
a great game, like in the high 80s, I think. A slam bang kind of game with the aforementioned Desi Rodriguez coming off an ankle injury, toughing it out, and Angel Delgado, I think he grabbed like 18 rebounds in that game or something. And Seton Hall eventually lost a close game, but that was really loud. Lou, you'll remember this. Um, Alex was a little kid, but Monmouth at Marist in 1996, when Monmouth went to the NCAA tournament for the first time, they had to win on the road in the semis to make it back home for the final against Ryder. And the semifinal at Marist is one of the loudest buildings I've ever been in my life. And Monmouth ended up quieting the crowd with a 4-point play from Mustafa Barksdale to win the game. And it went silent, but during the game, it was super, super loud. But anyway, Hinkle was like that. It was like, deafening. And the day before that, too, or 2 days before, in their semifinal, in their game, in Indiana State semi, that was really loud that
right.
night. But in the final against Seton Hall, yeah, it was 98% Indiana State people, so it made the victory even sweeter for the Pirates.
Now, Alex, that Monmouth at Marist game that Mr. Popkin was alluding to, I think I got this right. Who do you think was the Monmouth radio play-by-play announcer at the time?
I'm gonna guess it was one David Popkin. Am I right on that?
Yeah, it was my first year with them. It was their first year going to the tournament. Wayne Zoke was the coach, and Dave Calloway was his assistant. He would go on to become the head coach, obviously, and take them to the tournament 3 more times. But that was like home for me because I grew up down the shore and my parents went to Monmouth. So it was cool for me to get that job at a young age. I was like 25 and spent a couple years doing that before, moving on to a couple other things when they lost their radio deal. It was a lot of fun, man. It was a great experience. And when they finally won it at home, the next game, the fans stormed the court and they literally came like jumping over the media table and over us to get onto the floor, to mob the players. So that was my indoctrination into college basketball.
That's a core memory, I have to imagine. Lou and Dave, can I share what you texted me after the last week and the last game of the year? The stats you gave me in that text message about how this was the longest season. Tell us exactly how long of a season this was for you, Dave.
I mean, it was certainly the latest into the year that I've gone. I think I did 56 games this year, which is, it's not an NBA season, which I would like to eventually do, but it was a lot of basketball in a short amount of months. But it was enjoyable, and I got to do all kinds of different stuff this year. I did some NJIT, some St. Peter's, obviously the Seton Hall, and I've done the NEC games on TV for a long time, and some other odds and ends. So it was a great year, one of my favorites.
Dave, thank you for all your knowledge, and this was great. You were great, and congratulations on your career and the Seton Hall NIT Championship. And we hope in a couple of years it'll be a Seton Hall NCAA Championship, and that would be great.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. I appreciate all you continue to do for me and for your friendship and for inviting me on. And I'm grateful for a terrific season. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dave.
We enjoyed having you. Thank you so much, Dave Popkin, Seton Hall announcer, host of Crashing the Boards with Austin Johnson, and so much more. Dave, I know you're going to do some summer ball as well, right? Summer baseball?
We got baseball. We got the NEC tournament coming up. We got some Buffalo Bisons AAA games. So it'll keep me busy.
All right, go to that Popkin guy on Instagram. He'll probably update you where he's at there. But Dave, thanks so much for joining Terminello's Take on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.
You got it.